Hi, welcome back. I'm Tim Neubauer, and this is Training in the Metaverse. My co-host is Lance Losberg. How are you doing today, Lance?
Doing great, Tim.
We're going to be talking today about when is the right time to jump into the world of virtual reality and technology. Technology is changing a lot, and it's evolving super fast. Hence, our cell phones have to get replaced every 6 to 8 months.
Right.
Is now the right time to invest in this type of training in hardware and software?
Yeah, it's as good as time as any. And one thing that at least as us as a company are always cognizant of is future proofing as best possible. There's always going to be hardware innovations and, as you mentioned before, upgrades and new devices and things such as that. But in producing the content, we are looking years ahead in making sure that content is still going to be applicable and useful in years to come. So the timing is good in the aspects that the hardware devices are very reasonable. And as far as the content production goes, it's something we have 20 plus years of experience, so we have a little advantage of producing content at a lot more economical and faster rate than most.
That's very interesting because for me as a safety person, I have to develop content that is constantly evolving for the client. And you pretty much do that same thing. You work with the client to develop this content. Without going into a lot of detail, what are some of the technologies and softwares that would help us do this easier?
Right, and customization is the key, is be able to create these scenarios, these environments, and training, in this case, tools that are most effective for the company's needs. So after consultation with the company and what those objectives are, then we decide which tools or software or how we capture these environments or create these environments, and then how these scenarios are presented so that the trainee gets the most benefit from them, and then the company gets those results and are able to be able to make determinations from that.
So from the owner perspective, from me, is that I'm getting custom content that is developed to my program, my processes, and my people.
Yes.
That's a huge ROI from my perspective. And as technology is evolving, it is certainly adaptable as we go, correct?
Yes. Once again, is that we look to take an agnostic type device standpoint. And when we create the content, and also look to years ahead as far as whether it's resolution, frame rates, fidelity, and those types of things. So it's there's steps that we can take on our side in order to get longer use from the content that's being developed, and that the company benefits on a return from that, so not having to redo or recreate new content in the short term.
So this question's a little off topic, but I was thinking that when most people are thinking about these training, and I'm just going to use a catchphrase, training videos, right? Yeah. There are 30 minutes of a living hell of boredom. How long would a VR training video last on average?
So it once again, it depends on what the environment is, what the message is being delivered, and then you can make it as a real life experience. So it could be anything from 5 minutes to an hour, hours. But typically, because the comprehension level is so much greater in a virtual reality world, when people are using a virtual reality headset, things like that, they don't need to be as long. And also, you don't want to subject somebody to be in these worlds for an uncomfortable period of time.
Right.
So there's really no set time that they can be. Typically, we see them range anywhere from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, sometimes 15, 20 minutes. It all depends, again, on what the application is how it's being used, what the message needs to be done, and then taking consideration who is actually going to be inside these worlds that we create.
And I think a big point to make is that sitting still and watching somebody talk to you for 30 minutes is completely different in the virtual world, because you have to make decisions.
Yeah, we can make it such that there's a decision process along the way, so that if somebody's going through a virtual reality scenario, for example, and they get to a certain point, they have to make an ABC, decision or multiple choice, whatever it may be,
Right.
that they can select or make those decisions, and then we can take them to the path of
Right.
whether that decision is incorrect or not, or which way they want to go.
Well, let's hold off on more detail on that because
Okay.
I want to talk about that in our later segment. So I want to switch gears a little bit and just kind of introduce what our next segment is going to be before we go to our break. So how do we set up scenarios? How does the client know? I come across my clients who will say, "Hey, I want to do training on something very specific. Let's say a confined space, but here's what I experienced," and I would develop the training content to match that. How do you go about doing those scenarios?
So, it can be a very complex answer to that question. I'll try to keep it simple. There are two basic types of ways to create these virtual reality worlds. One would be a gaming technology where everything is animated. So you're basically recreating those spaces or those environments in an animated world of such way. The other way is using 360 video, where we actually use 360 video cameras that capture in 360 degrees spherically and be able to film, so to speak, digitally, those environments, and then create the scenarios from what's captured from those cameras. And I guess I may want to point out too is that sometimes I'll refer to scenarios as experiences, so they're kind of one and the same scenarios and experiences in my terminology. So not to confuse anyone from that standpoint. So there's a couple different ways that we can create these scenarios, experiences, and also say environments for that matter, for where we're going to put people and how we get there. And it's there's various tools that can be used, and our objective is always using the best tool for the job in doing so. In a way, we want to replicate what the physical training aspect would be, and create a virtual reality version of that.
Okay.
And so it's real life.
My reinforcement of that would be when I was talking about the 30-minute videos from hell where you just have to exist through there, that they're not tailored to the client, they're not tailored to the process, they're not tailored to the individual person, but when we're doing these virtual reality experiences, you're coming in and finding out what is their actual reality and then recreating it. Is
that's pretty much spot on to that point. And then depending on the company's desires, we can add or subtract, so to speak, from those training scenarios. That's
the impact of having real world training tied with virtual reality, that it matches in sync with each other is incredible. And this is kind of one of those left field questions I like throwing at you. Any real world success stories that you've put out where you've developed content and it worked out really well? Without naming names.
And there have been many. I just at the top of my head, one that's just pretty recent from a more of a soft skills type of a training is we done for a major healthcare organization here in this country, empathy training, and primarily for mid-level management to be able to how to identify people that have depression, as an example, and then be able how to deal with them so they don't fire them and be able to make them comfortable, and then be able to work with them to get help for their depression. And it's becoming a very useful tool for them. And obviously it's a return for on that investment for them, and retaining that employee and getting productivity out of that employee without having to go all the negative aspects that possibly could otherwise. And then also we've done quite a few of onboarding and used for bringing new employees coming on board, getting familiar with the culture and also the environments they're going to be working in, if it's a physical place, or just understanding the company's workings altogether. I
think we're going to hold the rest of that for our next segment, but you brought up a really interesting point, because in my world as a safety person, safety professional, I'm always looking at the hard skills: turning left, turning right, picking things up safely. Don't go put your hand where it doesn't belong. Those are hard skills, and you brought up soft skills.
Yes.
So the training that we're talking about, the experience we're talking about, it could be easily morphed into those soft skills. And you talked about dealing with people with stress and how managers can make decisions. And I really wanted to to emphasize that the going back to our metaverse
Right.
is that this isn't just about going up and down a ladder safely or driving a car or a forklift. This really is about management skills, and for me, that applies to a safety professional. I'll kind of go on a little tangent here myself. That safety people tend to say there is a hazard, fix it, and successful people have the soft skill to be able to say, hey, please fix this, or say it in such a way that people want to fix it.
Right.
And that sounds like an excellent opportunity for virtual reality to help managers practice those soft skills.
No question about it. And the beauty of it is that we could provide training application scenarios for example, somebody who's going to be working in a hazardous workplace that's never been there before.
Right.
So by providing them this virtual reality tour, so to speak, of putting them of where they're going to be working and recognizing what is where, and what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't work, whatever machinery there may be, whatever equipment's being running around, whatever it may be, that they feel like they've been there before once they get there.
Right.
So they're familiar with it. At the same time, using the same platform without having to go and recreate or
hazards, not hazards.
Yeah, whatever. But using that same platform as from the software standpoint, the content standpoint, we can deploy other content, such as you mentioned, the soft skills types of things. Whether it be for that training aspect, or that utilizing soft skills to help managers or trainees in that respect. So it's a platform that we look at that, and speaking of the metaverse, can be utilized to be able to distribute all types of content without having to so-called buy new equipment.
Right. Yeah, I can see the benefit of, as you were talking about, new employees and onboarding. And I'm like, wow, to be able to shoot a one-time event where there are hazards that need to be identified, safe conditions, exit paths, to be able to put that in and have the new employee onboarded and experience that is tremendous. And then to be able to make the right decisions on the soft skills. It's a huge benefit for that. And in the hard skill and the soft skill. I did want to bring up one of the things with training, and you'll love this, feel free to steal it, folks, is that one of the bases of OSHA 10 and 30-hour training is to teach hazard recognition, avoidance, and control. And if you were able to take a video of your environment, virtual reality, and walk somebody through, you would give them a safe environment to learn hazard recognition and avoidance, and then teach them the control in another format to reinforce that. These are huge benefits.
And that's a perfect application for the use of the technology.
How does the VR technology help me test leaders' skills, managers' skills, or the soft skills necessary to do a job?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that we can create those scenarios, so to speak, and how to develop that. An example would be that if we are creating a training scenario such that you're forced to make a decision at some point in time and create like a decision tree, and the trainee would have to make a selection on what their next step might be, or what the answer is to multiple questions or directions they may even have to take. It could be just taking a turn going through a door. It's a lot of different ways that we can create those decision-making processes.
Used to call that fault tree analysis. Make a decision, then it led to two more decisions, and I'm sure there's new technology and methodology for that.
Well, yeah, it's basically the same. What we call it is it'd be using hotspots, and then depending upon what decision is made, then we branch to what the outcome would be based upon that decision. And it could be branching to other scenarios. It could be simply just an answer to the question with graphics, or it could be projecting a template or a PowerPoint or a PDF or some textual information, or even could be like a conventional video inside the 360 VR video world. So there's a lot of there's a lot of different ways to make the approaches. It just depends on what the desired outcome.
This is huge for me. As we were describing this, it's one thing to teach people to do a hard skill, a task, hammer a nail, use a saw properly. The other thing is having that person make the right decision at the right time in a number of different scenarios. So you can build a bunch of different scenarios in, and depending on which way they move throughout the process, they would get different alternatives or reinforcement or guidance to get back on track.
Exactly.
I guess that would be the
exactly, and it could be customized to whatever the trainer would want the trainee to experience or have the function that they need to perform.
Are there any examples? I kind of laugh as I'm thinking this thing of some soft skills, and I was trying to think of one in particular that would jump out above the rest. And I run through all these different ideas, but a running joke for me is empathy is impossible to teach. You watch a horror movie and 6 people get hacked up by a chainsaw, but if the dog gets hurt, there's all my empathy.
Right.
The 6 other people are like, oh well. So it's some people have a hard time with communication and empathy. Is there, just talking about that, have you had any experience developing content for those soft managerial skills at a higher level? Yes,
and we've done applications such as that. For a major healthcare company, actually, we provided an empathy training to how to deal with employees that might have an anxiety disorder, depression, or some kind of other type of handicap, or physically or mentally, whatever it may be, and how to recognize it, how to deal with that person, how to get them help, so to retain that employee and get the productivity from that employee that's desired. That's a very useful process in using virtual reality for.
It's to me, it's very interesting because I do live in the small world of safety all the time, but I do have to manage, and I coach and mentor people who have to manage. So those soft skills are amazing, but to take that to the next level, to say that upper level management and HR, human resource people could all get this training. So it really is training in the metaverse because it crosses all spectrums.
It does, and other soft skill types things is onboarding a new employee and getting them familiar with the culture of the company, maybe the physical location or locations where they wouldn't be able to physically go, or they want to understand how other employees in the company work in different locations around the world or around wherever it may be. They can kind of go there virtually and experience that and have some kind of familiarity with it before they get there, if they're going to go there, or at least a better understanding when they're talking to those people what they're looking at and what they see and from their seat. So that's a process as well.
You have no idea how many of these units you just sold, because in the world of onboarding, I always say that you only have one chance to make a first impression. And if safety happens 3 days after you started work, that was your first impression. But to have one of these virtual reality videos that walks people through, and once again, I'm not a fan of the sit here and watch a 4-hour-long video because it doesn't send the right message, but to actually immerse them in this training, it makes a huge impact. And they can actually see their coworkers working in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. There's huge benefits to this. It's incredible the applications for new hire, new employee onboarding, or just onboarding if you transfer to a different facility. Right.
And it's also we've done a lot of applications use it for recruiting as well. So getting new employees, which is a tough thing in today's world, is looking for a good new employees and bringing them on board and help to recruit them, show them why they're a company that they should work for as opposed to a competing company.
So it's not like everybody doesn't have this problem. This is not new. We all are experiencing this problem so talk to me a little bit. So the recruiting, and it's not for like your recruiters who are going out and finding the people. You're actually letting potential new hires, candidates, view your company through virtual reality.
Exactly. So they get a better understanding of who they'd be working for if they went to work for that company, and what that company's culture is like, what their thought process is like, what their physical environments look like. It just gives them a firsthand impression, and hopefully a better impression, and then say, you know what, not only is this company really, have their stuff together, they look like they're, a place I want to work, but oh, by the way, they're using this virtual reality technology. This is very cool. They must be on the forefront of what's going on out there.
Makes me want to sign up and have you make a video for me right now. Great. Well, in this podcast, we talked about a couple of things, and I'm going to recap them real quickly here. Virtual reality is I guess, new to a lot of people, but it's not new technology, is now the best time to jump in. And you said no time is better than today. That even though the technology is evolving, so is the marketplace. So it's a good investment on there. We talked a little bit about how to develop the scenarios,
Right.
And we talked about the decision tree, and we talked about the soft skills, which to me is absolutely incredible that we can teach the hard skills and the soft skills, and I can actually test and practice the soft skills without putting a real human being in front of somebody who might not have the appropriate soft skills. I love the recruiting thing. I think you've actually convinced me to have you go ahead and make our virtual reality recruiting video for us. So, well, that wraps it up for this episode, Training in the Metaverse. I'm Tim Neubauer, and this is Lance Losberg.